Thank you very much. I feel like a lot of context has already been given, and my reflection to all of that has been shared is I feel like as South Sudanese, we need to start from a place of recognizing and acknowledging that what we're dealing with is structural, it is systemic, and it's highly institutional. The dysfunctionality that we're struggling with is definitely by design and not a mistake or an error that happened. And for the longest time, I think we've been focused on the question of who in our analysis of what is happening in South Sudan. And I constantly reiterate that no amount of representation, be it youth, be it women, be it marginalized communities, no amount of representation in a system or in systems, in structures, in institutions that were never designed to serve and benefit you can shift the course. I feel like a lot of the conversation centers on who, without the recognition that the dysfunctionality cannot be solved by just the question of who, or the leadership with focus on the individuals that can bring about that change. I feel like our generation of South Sudanese, my generation, and a lot of interest and bias has been mentioned earlier, so maybe my reflections also has a bit of interest for my generation at heart. But I feel like my generation is uniquely positioned to be able to have the authority to shift this discourse or chart a different course for South Sudan as a country. And I say that because we are a generation that was born into an active military resistance, and there's a lot that has been learned from that strategy and process as a form of resistance. We also sit at the intersection of witnessing a transition from that liberation to trying to forge a country from 2005, that's nearly 20 years. And we've also uniquely witnessed the struggles politically, militarily, to what the country is going through right now. And the core of that has been the weaponization of our darkest history, of our struggles, of our exploitation of the violence that we experience as the forefront, and it's a strategy that is being used to charter a new form of dominancy and control. And sitting at that intersection, right now we have a country where the majority of citizens are rightfully numbed because of a generation that spent their lives fighting for liberation, for freedom, for a new vision of a country that would be more inclusive, that would serve the interests of the people, but have been betrayed in that process. A generation that is rightfully exhausted of fighting, and no matter what is happening in the country, everyone seems to be completely disconnected from or feeling the need that they have the power to influence things politically. We are also a generation that is sitting at that intersection of an upcoming generation that feels frustrated with everything that is happening. And we can see the ripple effect of that with what is happening in Kenya. A generation that is just entirely saying enough is enough, enough is enough. And I feel like as a generation that is uniquely positioned in this mix of these generations and contexts, and this rich history of South Sudan or the Sudan leading to where we are now in the region and globally, I feel like we have an opportunity to shift the question that we're asking. That is not about representation, it's not about who, but really that we start to ask the questions of what and how. If the systems, if these structures are not working, the systems, the governance, the political directions that was designed to serve and govern the country. The who question is absolutely important, but I feel like it's about time that we start to ask the question of what and how in regards to redefining what does governance mean for us as a people? What are the institutions that we envision? If the institutions that have been existent since the formation of the country, if at all we can identify ourselves as that, have historically continued to fail citizens, historically continued to serve their intended purpose. I do believe that the institutions are not dysfunctional. I feel like they are perfectly functioning the way they were designed to function and serving the interests of those that they were designed to serve. And those interests are not South Sudanese people. They are not the ordinary South Sudanese population, and especially young people. And so I feel like the solutions for us as this generation of South Sudanese lies in asking the question of the what and how with regards to really envisioning and rethinking the institutions that exist, challenging and questioning, because I feel like transformation is the song we've sung for the longest time, and these structures and systems and institutions continue to prove that they don't function to serve us. And so the question is on who, and who do we need to put in that position? Who do we need to represent us, to have our voice heard, to actually asking ourselves whether these structures actually work for us, these systems, these institutions work for us, and what does it look like for this generation to redefine and restructure some of these institutions that are actually designed with the core and interests of South Sudanese people at heart. Thank you.
You're showing the older generation how it is done. And this is why this intergenerational co-leadership is absolutely necessary. It is not the who. So every time we think about the who and think about leaders first, we fail to look at the systems, at the institutions. Who do they serve? Some cogent points on the table there. And I forgot to introduce you. Let me do justice to your bio. Aluel Atem is a development economist, a blogger, and an African feminist activist from South Sudan with a primary focus on conflict transformation. And you said, the song of transformation. We've been singing that song for too long. We do something now on transformation, gender, and sexuality. She co-created 2 women's rights initiatives in South Sudan. Mamara Sakit Village, a young South Sudanese feminist community, and Crown the Woman South Sudan, a women's rights organization. She's an editor and curator for Gender Talk 2011-211, a radical South Sudanese feminist traditional and digital multimedia platform, and writes for African feminism, and a host of other things. I want to thank you. The debate continues.